one of the things that I mentioned to you was that there were many early experiments in expressive control. And one of the very first electronic music instruments, beyond the theremin, that was really an expressive keyboard instrument was the instrument called the Ondes Martenot, invented by a guy named Martenot, who was a cellist, and who wanted to create an electronic instrument that had some of the same control, flexibility, and expression that a cello did. And he came up with the Ondes Martenot, which is a monophonic electronic instrument that has both a keyboard and a continuous pitch control. And the keyboard itself also had variable pitch control built into it. You could play the keyboard and sort of wiggle it back and forth and get a little bit of pitch control. And there was an independent manual control for controlling dynamics so that you could affect the dynamics of the note after you played it and articulate it that way. So it was something a little bit like the Z-axis control I have here. Or you could play it with a ribbon controller, a ring that was attached to a string that would move continuously along, and it had little sort of notches on there that you could find the pitch. So you could play discrete pitches with vibrato, manual vibrato, something like what I'm doing here. Also be able to play continuously sliding pitches and have an independent dynamic control. But it was monophonic. And it used the heterodyne principle, the same heterodyne principle that the theremin did. So its timbral control was fairly basic. So in order to get around that, Martenot invented these things called diffusers, which were speakers that had things stuck on them that you could route the signal through. One of which had a bunch of springs, so you get this kind of a spring revert thing. In other words, they were speaker cabinets with stuff attached to the front. Another one had strings, kind of like a harp layout, that were tuned to the chromatic scale that would give you a sort of a piano reverb sound. And another one had a cymbal on the front, and it would give you this kind of metallic reverb sound. And you could switch between these different diffusers as part of the control panel. So you had these kind of four basic timbres. So one of the great exponents of that instrument was a composer, a French composer named Olivier Messiaen. And he's probably the best known composer for the Ondes Martenot. And he's one of the reasons that the Ondes Martenot is still in use today. And he wrote a lot of music for the Ondes Martenot. And one of the thing I'm going to play for you now is a transcription of one of the things that he wrote for a sextet of Ondes Martenot. And in 1937, they had a World's Fair or World Exhibition or something like that in Paris. And he was commissioned to write a piece for that called the Festival of Beautiful Waters. And they had, I think, fountains with lights on them and stuff like that, very advanced for 1937. And so he was commissioned to write this piece, and he wrote it for 6 Ondes Martenot so that he would be able to do harmonic, chordal things with it. And there's one piece particularly, one of the sections, which has since become kind of a standard, such as it is, of the Ondes Martenot repertoire, that's called orison, which means prayer. And one of the interesting things about this is that, as many of you know, many of you probably know, Messiaen was in the French Medical Corps in World War II, was taken prisoner, and was interred in a prisoner of war camp in Silesia. And there he wrote one of the great classics of 20th century music called the Quartet for the End of Time. That he was allowed to write this piece of music and wrote it for the available instrumentation, which was piano, him playing piano. And there were 3 other guys there who played violin, cello, and clarinet. So it's sort of an unusual quartet arrangement. And the idea that he wrote this in a prisoner of war camp, this incredible, beautiful piece of music, is really extraordinary. And what's lesser known is that he kind of adapted some of his older pieces for that. And there's a movement in that which is an arrangement for cello and piano of this piece, Orison, which originally was for 6 Ondes Martenot. And what I've done is transcribe that into an arrangement for Buchla and Continuum, and that's what I want to play for you today. Use the cables here to kind of prop this up. I guess I just have to read this.